Well, very good night.
For all the colleagues who are starting to enter the site at this time, welcome once again. To the PACE-P conferences. Well, please confirm if someone can confirm the sound. To see how we are doing with the sound. We always have to, sometimes we miss it. We don't hear it well. So I hope you are listening well and that everything works as it should. Well, in the meantime, I am going to say hello to Jose, who is with us, also Rosie, Felipe, Angelica, also Viridiana. Well, over here, Angelica tells us that it sounds perfect, and the same with Jose, that it sounds good. Well, very good. Well, continuing with the agenda tonight, we have a very interesting conference. Today we are going to talk about the intimate life of each one of us. We are going to learn not to mix these lives, to be prudent, to know how far each limit goes. It is a very interesting subject. Well, new colleagues, as always, over here inviting you to lecture number 1. Bottom part, here is the link. And logically, those who want to belong to the WhatsApp group, Telegram, Fogeos group, so that they are aware of the various activities that we do here on the page. For tomorrow, we have reflection at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do not forget. I don't know yet. Let's talk about the homosexual self, or let's talk about the extraterrestrials. Have a little bit, understand a little bit this approach. Well, Jesus joined us here, and Emilian is also with us tonight. Well, we transmit here on Tuesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. We transmit conferences, reflections. Well, that's all. Let's start tonight's conference. Today we have the 22nd lecture, Phase B. 22 Phase B, remember that. B phase lectures are 25, and then we go back and start from 1 because it is a continuous cycle. Well, then the title is The Intimate Life of Each One. What is the objective of this conference? Well, to see the differences between 3 types of life. The public life, the private life, and the inner interior life, the intimate life. We must not confuse these 3 aspects because conflicts and problems can arise. So let's start by looking at what public life is. Each person has his public life and develops this life with others, with other people in society. There we find everything that has to do with the work that the person does, the physical work, the office. It has to do with money, it has to do with groups, it has to do with things. External, general things, doesn't it? Interaction with society. So here, from the point of view of knowledge, then we find the people to whom we give the teaching to all mankind. That is the external part, isn't it? Public life. It is to know how to lead this life in harmony, in logical companionship. Here, we have to work on many things, such as gossip, such as the gossip. It is necessary to understand the distances that must be managed between one and the other. There is a distance that should not be violated, because there is a trust that is very important. But there, when that trust is abused, respect is lost. And when respect is lost, problems start because people interfere in the private life or intimate life of another person. Then we must know how far each thing goes. Because when someone meddles in private things or in intimate things, it generates problems. Then problems are generated. Problems start. Slander, gossip, private things. Then that is the public life, the interaction with all the people in society. Private life. This is already different. Private life is already the life belonging to the family. Everything that has to do with the family. Everything that has to do with, well, the mommy and daddy, wife, children. And in this private life, logically, from the point of view of knowledge, we find the work of birth, the practice of his precept, everything that has to do with the private psychological gymnasium of each one, the relations he has with his partner, private problems, issues of lust, fornication, pride, well, the conflicts that occur due to lack of work in a relationship that must be conflicts that occur due to lack of work in a relationship that has to be resolved, and the different circumstances that appear in the family, private things that only couples should solve. Families. They should not interfere with other people. So this is also from the external point of view. One must learn to handle with prudence many aspects of this kind. There are events, there are problems. And those problems, well, are from home, they are private. To reveal private life is to generate new conflicts. So, as I say, this lends itself to gossip, to adultery processes. Many times a person starts talking about his or her partner and there is someone else is interested in that person and precipitates an adultery. And precipitates an adultery by not knowing how to handle things as they should be. Problems that arise continuously. Well, in life, in private life, right? So knowing how to manage the distance, right? Well, and the third one, which is the most important, which is the intimate life. This is already related to the things of being. It is already something that is not revealed neither in public life nor in the educated life, private life. They are things that are related to the inner work, the initiations, the grades, the advances of each one. Astral experiences of the closed book which should not be spoken physically with anyone. They are secret teachings that are received logically in the inner worlds and that are useful for the person himself, right? No more. There are other teachings that are open book. These can be expressed publicly. So we have to know how to differentiate at what moment we are giving private information and at what moment we can speak publicly about that information. If we reveal private things, we stagnate, we lose our being because it does not come back to us. The being because it does not give us information because we are so gossipy and we lose strength. And we lose strength because astral experiences are revealed that should not be revealed. When a person talks about his or her astral experiences, normally he or she undresses. And the people who are listening realize because private and secret things of the person who is speaking. So you have to learn to handle this with great prudence, to know up to what point you can talk and up to what point you can't talk, and up to what point you can talk and up to what point you can't. Everyone gradually awakens the capacity to interpret their experiences. As the intuition awakens, as he learns to interpret the language of being, the less he speaks, the more psychological strength. The more you speak, the less force. So, many of these teachings help to understand. They help the person to mature. It generates a lot of strength and development. So a lot of these teachings in the beginning, well, logically they warn the person not to speak, to be quiet. Sometimes they give external information from the physical world, and the person, well, he knows that physical events are going to happen, but he cannot talk about it. They talk about people who are, well, making mistakes, and that suddenly they are going to harm him. But one must keep silent, not to talk about it, because it creates a schism. Right? Well, many people are affected, and those people lose strength by not being prudent in what they are saying. Yes? And without realizing it, without wanting to or trying to do something right, you end up doing something very wrong because you do not know how to handle it. All that information, then they warn. And if the person does not obey, they do not give him experiences again. They leave him blind. Then it can last a month, 2 months or more where she does not receive more information. It is necessary to work a lot on what has to do with pride. The talkative ego, the exhibitionist ego, the ego of vanity. Because that is something very personal that nobody should care about. Now one understands that there are many people who do not know how to interpret their experiences, but there is no need to talk about the whole experience. If you are going to ask something, make it something specific like for, and that is at the beginning, because really sooner or later the person starts to develop all this capacity to interpret things. And many times the person to whom you ask interprets things wrongly and confuses the other person. A person who is asleep interpreting experiences ends up diverting or ends up disorienting or confusing. On the one hand, on the other hand, the person becomes dependent, no longer trusts his or herself, and watches over secrets that has been entrusted to them. And all this logically generates, as I said, loss of strength. As I already said, loss of strength. One is harmed oneself. We do ourselves harm. And we risk having something taken away from us, something that has already been taken away from him. So you have to be and learn to manage, as I have already said, this whole process. You have to know that some of your colleagues who are with you at this time will no longer be with you in the future. And if you start to reveal secrets to them, those secrets can turn against you. Because everyone or all of us have that self of envy, and that self of envy makes people to keep their secrets. Keep secrets. And when they are going to do harm, they reveal those secrets. And well, more conflicts and problems arise. Because that is how gossip is. Criticism appears, slander appears, bad things appear. interpretations appear. No. All this amount of forces and all for one reason, because one does not know how to be prudent and speak more than one should. And speak more than one should. On the other hand, many people, because of gossip or misinterpretations to the outside world, end up withdrawing from knowledge. People who feel that they are failures, that so-and-so gives them experiences that they do not have. That person, the being prefers it. All these interpretations, many people have, and that is why they end up, because of envy, they end up feel that they are not good for this and they go away from knowledge or stagnate. Now, one must know that a teaching says that man knows himself by his dreams. When a person talks about his dreams, he reveals his psychological state and can be manipulated. And they can manipulate him because they see his weaknesses. So, that is another aspect, because if you talk about your experiences and you listen to a black magician, well, the black magician interprets that and knows your weaknesses. Well, the black magician interprets that and knows your weaknesses and controls you. Controls you, subdues you. So that is why we have to be very cautious in these things. There have been cases, for example, where there are comrades who reveal very ugly things that they did. Some years ago, they have committed serious mistakes. Some of them, we had the case of a colleague who practiced zoophilia. He starts to talk in public about this nonsense, and all the colleagues were afraid and disgusted and repulsed by this character, because those people were not prepared to listen to that. From then on, this fellow worker was treated with a lot of suspicion, a lot of distance, a lot of mistrust. There was another colleague who said that he had abused a child, and they even hated him to the point of hating him. People are not mature enough to listen to such things. Since everyone feels so puritanical, they do not accept that there is another person close to them who has committed such mistakes, who has made those mistakes. Another one who had killed a person had also killed a person. And the same thing, they took him as a dangerous element. They began to treat him in a different way. The expectations. So there was even a partner who didn't know things about the couple. Did not know things about the couple. And when this couple started to talk about this in public, the same couple became very suspicious of her. So we don't know how to understand or do not understand that there are things that should not be disclosed, because they do not measure the consequences of what they talk about. And as pride loves to talk, then it mixes things of secret candles. And conflicts and problems are generated unnecessary by not having the right prudence. Then the oath is violated. From the point, the internal view violates the oath that one has with the father and in the mother. There are teachings that are very deep esoteric, and that these teachings should never, ever, ever, ever be, should never be spoken about it publicly. That is more, not even with your partner, that this is very private. So we are all receiving information. That, as I'm telling you, that is something that is too secret. If we don't pay attention, then we are going to have to go into the darkness in one night. And that night means that, well, the person does not have confidence to give you more information until he matures a little bit and stop being so talkative. Well, this lecture is very short, very precise, very straight to the point. So with this, I conclude tonight's topic. And for next week, we are going to see the lecture titled The Symbol of the Eagle Swallowing the Snake, and it is a lecture that talks about the last three steps of the third mountain to achieve self-realization. So I hope you will join us. And well, there we are going to deepen a little bit more in all these topics of Phase B. Very well, we are going to some of the questions and concerns that you have, but I am going to greet here some who arrived a little late. Javier, Lorena. Also here we find Alba Veronica. Well, here is also Anan. Veronica, Lorena tells us Luis Carlos Manito. You already explained today's image. According to what I interpret over there, it is the invitation to prudence and to persevere in the intimate life, right? Yes, it is. Yes, it is a symbolism. Here there is a woman who invites them to keep silence, and also with that silence develops the knowledge within the same person. Well, says Lorena Luis Carlos, you have already decided you will work tomorrow. According to what is happening, I consider that the extraterrestrial self should be a priority. Or what do you think? Very cool. Very gentle. Yes, I think we are going to work. We are going to talk about the extraterrestrial self tomorrow. We haven't touched on that subject for a while, and it's important. So, most probably that's what it is. What happens is that there are colleagues, as we had agreed last week, to talk about the homosexual self. But yes, I agree that priority is priority. So, let's confirm once and for all, and tomorrow we will talk about extraterrestrials. Well, Emilian, excuse me. I think that the one about the extraterrestrial is not about a self, but about some information. Well, we have the nirvana self, which is extraterrestrial. And well, let's talk about how. Is that it forms a Hanasmus in type 3 nirvana. That the universe is full of nirvanos. But let's remember that the nirvana are traitors. They betrayed the Christ. But they achieved the level of man, gray man, but they achieved the level. Well, Lorena says, Luis, how does one know which experiences one can divulge? How to know with when one can share the teaching of the astral experience? Measuring the consequences, measuring how far what you are going to talk about can help you. Who is the one who wants to speak, if it is pride or vanity, or it is the exhibitionism or the mythomaniac ego, or the ego that wants to impress the others? Then one measures it. On the one hand, and on the other hand, well, analyze if what you're going to say is something that serves to give an orientation or an example. Depending on the subject being dealt with, if he is trying to show that he is very advanced or not. In other words, it all depends on the approach and the intention with which you are going to talk about where that information is going. Well, this way it also says, well, we also greet Jose Ramirez over here. Celia also joins us. From Nicaragua. I didn't know that Celia hadn't taken care that she was from Nicaragua. Well, greetings also. There are a lot of people from Central America. Well, this way, Jose says. Luis Carlos up to date. When teaching and talking about the subject of sexuality, they always ask you about your experience. One is always asked about one's experience. In this matter, which is practically intimate and personal, not that we talk in a general way, we do not point out anything, but in a general way, then there is no need to expose one's private life. If one talks about whether one has achieved chastity, well, that can be said because it is necessary to show how it was achieved and all the work that has been done. How it was achieved and all the work that had to be done to achieve it. Work that had to be done. That is an orientation. But not to speak with pride or with the feeling that I am very advanced and things like that. No. It simply serves as a motivational reference point for others to work on and also reach. Now, chastity so far is the beginning of the work, so it is not something of exaggeratedly important. Yes, it is important, but let's say that we have to give it the connotation without going to the extreme. Well, Julian says, what is the difference between Mother Divine and Mother Kali? Mother Kali is Mother Death. They are aspects of the same mother. In other words, they are splittings of the same mother. The Divine Mother. And the mother, the one is love. And the other is Mother Death. Well, the same Mother Kali is the same of Kataproserpina. Represent the same Mother Death. Well, Jonathan says we talk about what we already know. We listen to what we are going to know. Let's say that they are reference points so that the person logically is going to, sooner or later, he's going to receive information. So it is. Right. Thank you, Luis. It is true that little by little, the Father is getting closer to talk to us. That gives us a lot of encouragement. That is what is at the base of sustaining oneself in knowledge. The information, the teachings that the being gives you. And that is what generates encouragement, enthusiasm to continue working. Of course, because the person already begins to have contact with his being. Well, this way Angelica says we are slaves of what we tell, and owners of what we keep silent about. Telling personal experiences is like violating the higher teachings. Violating the higher teachings given to us by the inner Father and Mother. Yes, it is. Emilian, a question. A master lemur of the third race, the tail implant fell out. That was put in him, and he is now like his natural race. I mean, if he was self-realized with it, no, the masters don't have a tail. They precisely nip the tail in the bud. The tail is the ego, so a teacher cannot have a tail, much less implants. In other words, none of those things a human being has. All his energy is in his spine, in his being. And the tail is gone? Well, over here, Claudia tells us excellent information from Peru. Good also to the comrades from Peru. Of course, yes, Fernando Luis, the extraterrestrials that are going to arrive in reality come to confuse humanity more. More to the humanity explaining the knowledge of another way. Or not as and how it should be. It is not our job to do it. They are coming. They simply come to motivate to unveil some secrets. A person who is not prepared, well, they are not going to help her. Because we are como los Larvae, elements full of I-ness, elements full of dark forces in our psychology, and they don't have that. And, well, they come from extraterrestrials, both nirvanic and intergalactic, but, well, tomorrow we are going to talk about that subject. So they are second mountain masters. They come from, I don't know, from various parts of the universe, I assume. What is certain is that they are going to enter in contact. I don't know when, but they have already warned us. And we have to open the doors so that people start to assimilate all this and prepare themselves. Do not go into crisis because there are too many deviations of this subject. Fernando says, Luis, the extraterrestrials that are going to arrive in reality come to confuse humanity even more. Well, I already answered it, didn't I? Do not come to confuse. They come to motivate, to make themselves invisible, to begin to give information so that people may understand that they are asleep, that they are trapped in theories, in concepts that have nothing to do with reality. That they are trapped in theories, in concepts that have nothing to do with reality, especially from God's point of view. Well, from many points of view? Well, this way. Sebastian says, one of the teachings of a master of the medieval times says something like, one should be silent about all personal matters. Abstain, as if you had taken a solemn oath to tell others everything, how much one thinks, one hears, or discovered. As long as then be verified, or completely. Certainty. And I think that even if there is certainty, one should speak only when the being indicates. No, one must measure. One must measure, because if one puts oneself in that position, one puts oneself in a very wrong position. Because the person has no contact with the being, so that the being is speaking to him. That the being is speaking to him. Second by second, or every time the person gradually wakes up. One must be responsible for one's acts, for one's words, for one's actions. Then one must learn to measure. And that is the way to develop. That we cannot leave the work of the being to him as one, and he does what corresponds to him. Does its part. The being is not going to do the part that corresponds to us. We do what corresponds to us, and it does what corresponds to it. That is, then we have to learn. That is why we are talking about this subject, because we have to learn to manage distances. If you become too confident with another person, that person will tend to dominate you, or you will tend to dominate that person. If you have too much trust with a person, the normal thing is that lust will be activated, and you end up in a relationship, or you end up in a sentimental approach, even if you don't have a relationship, but they get into a lustful vibration. So you have to know how to handle this. But, well, we are in a school, and we are learning. The more you work on death, the more logical it is. The more they will learn. Well, Oscar says the interpreting primer is very helpful. I recommend it. Yes, that's what it's for. Well, we also say hello to Ligia. Well, I think there are no more concerns, no more questions. I hope that you have enjoyed this topic, that you have understood a little bit this evening, so that you have points of reference to continue working. All these talkative, gossiping criticizers, those who meddle in what they should not, eyes that want to know the lives of others, selves that want to expose private lives. Well, there is a lot of work related to that. So, well then, the only thing left for us to do is to deal with these kinds of flaws and balance. Balance the way we We speak, we express, and the approach that serves to help and not to harm. That being no more, I bid you farewell. Have a pleasant rest of the evening. All the best. Don't lose your strength. Ask the being every night for what you need. Whatever you need. That it gives you courage, that it shows you things, but also make efforts every day to increase the levels of death. Remember that death is that awakens one in the astral. Without death, there is nothing. We will see each other tomorrow at the 4 o'clock reflection. We already agreed that we are going to talk about the I, or not the I, no. We are going to talk about the extraterrestrials. So for those who want to join us, we are going to talk about the extraterrestrials. Welcome. That's the way it is. So